Fun times in Cleveland again.
Still Cleveland.
Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.
Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I'm Justin Mason, and that, I picked the right direction this time, is Dave Mcdonald. Dave, how you doing, my friend?
Good, buddy, good. Fresh after coming off of First Pitch Arizona, where we actually met in person for the first time.
Right? I mean, and I can actually call you my friend now, because we have met in person, we have hugged.
Yep.
You are a monster of a man.
I picked you up like you were a small child.
Yeah, I have not been picked up like that since I was a small child. For those that are wondering, Dave is, like I said, a monster of a man, a mountain of a man. Picked up my 275-pound ass and just shook me like I was a teddy bear.
And you loved it.
Absolutely, I loved it. I haven't been held like that in a long time. I'm married.
Oh man, yeah, it was so great to meet everybody finally. You know, we had a lot of first timers like me at First Pitch, and we've all been talking on Twitter for like the last 1.5 to 2 years, and just really great to finally put like real. I feel like we all have a better understanding of who each other are now. A lot of people are exactly as they are on Twitter, but a lot of the people honestly can be misunderstood, and I'm really glad I got that opportunity to meet a lot of these people, and I had a blast. I could not. Promote it enough. It's an amazing time. Everybody should get out there one of these years.
Absolutely. I've talked about it pretty much since I went for the first time myself in 2019, and really tried to promote it. And I think maybe some people think I'm blowing smoke up their ass when I say just how amazing of a time it is when you go out there. But I think you can attest to it firsthand now that it is well worth the money. Register early, it's cheaper, and get out there next year for 2022, because this year was a little bit smaller, even though we had so many first timers because of COVID and everything. Right. So I'm assuming next year will be the largest year they've ever had. It should be an absolute blast. Make sure you're there next year.
100% agree. Did they have I would say maybe around 100 people this year?
I think they said 115.
Okay, that's about right.
They usually get around 180, something like that. So it's a little bit smaller than it was in 2019. But my guess is it's going to be well over 200 next year. And I mean, some of the smartest people in the industry, just kind of sitting around talking about baseball panels. I didn't even go to a lot of the panels. I spent most of my time hanging out.
2 or 3.
I think I went to about 2 or 3 as well, not including the 2 that I spoke at. And then I think I went to 1 baseball game while I was there. It was for me. It was just socializing, hanging out with people, learning, picking brains, and just having a good time. It's definitely, I can't say enough about how much fun it is and how much you learn just by being around kind of such great talent in terms of, industry players.
Exactly. And everybody's so welcoming and open and wanting to talk about everything. So, it's there's nobody's going to big time you, it's not like that at all. Mm-hmm. Everybody there is very friendly, very willing to talk. So yeah, absolutely agree.
So let's transition away from that and let's talk about kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about, we're going to do kind of a little bit of the beginning of a postmortem on 2021, kind of talk about maybe some of the things we learned. And we're going to talk about our misses. We're going to eat some crow tonight. We'll talk about our hits next week. But I think, one of the things that I think we get criticized a lot in the industry is not taking L's, right? Not admitting when we were wrong, but we're going to do that tonight. We're going to stand up straight, come cover our nose, close our eyes, and just spew out all the garbage that was part of our season. And then next week we'll take our victory laps as we have deserved, because we both deserve some victory laps, but we can't overlook the things that we got wrong or that we missed out on. Let's start with some news, though. Justin Turner, in the last few minutes, injured his hamstring, running down to first. He pulled up lame. He's been nursing this thing, it seems like, for a little while now, but this is probably the end of his season, at least the end of the NLCS. Maybe he can make it back for the World Series if the Dodgers are to advance. But it looked pretty ugly. He could be out for longer than that. He's going to be 37 heading into next season. Where are you at on Justin Turner? I mean, this is a guy who, per plate appearance, is a great player, but misses time.
Right. And you kind of just have to go into the season knowing that. Like, you don't want this guy to be your starting third baseman, obviously. Great talent, like you said. He's always been one of my favorites. I had a couple shares of him this year as well. I like getting those cheap shares of good offenses like him, who he's a legit good hitter. He just has some injury issues, and you might think that I would be out on a guy like that, but it's not an early pick. I can take him in round, 14 or so, or 12 or wherever. He goes pretty late enough where it's still – you're able to get some value out of it. You just have to make sure you're backing yourself up. Like when I take guys like that, I'm making sure I have two other guys. I have a starter at third base, and I have another guy with third base eligibility that I can count on, where he's the bonus. You know what I mean? Like he can really push my corner infield slot ahead when he's playing, but when he's not, I still have a way to fill that.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. He's one of those guys that I think, because of his age, because of his injury track record, he actually gets pushed down a little bit too far in drafts. He's a guy I usually like coming out of as a UT kind of, in my UT slot, or as a CI. It's just he ends up returning value every year. You just have to kind of plan around the injuries.
Exactly.
This is one of the reasons why I think you tend to stay away from the early injury guys, so you can take the discount on the guys later on. And not have too many pile up. So
because
if
you take a third baseman early that has an injury history, you really can't afford to take a Justin Turner. It's all about how you construct your roster, and when those guys go down, you have to be able to be okay with who am I going to put in place of them. So I'm not going to have any Mondesi Turner teams next year.
Yeah, and I mean for me, it'll be interesting to see how many times I get Anthony Rendon. He's a guy I got in the FPAZ draft we're going to talk about here, just because I like the price so much, but I can't do a Rendon Turner team because that would put way too much pressure on one of them to stay healthy for the whole season.
Exactly.
Yasmani Grandal has got knee surgery. I mean, obviously he's done for the rest of the year because the White Sox are out. What are your concerns on him coming into 2022, a guy who missed a large portion of the season due to injury?
Yeah, I mean, with a catcher, that's particularly troubling. I mean, their wear and tear on their knees is a lot. So, counting on a guy like that, unless he's going to play a significant amount of DH, which he might, I kind of
hard to with the White Sox.
Right. And I don't know, that they even have a good enough backup catcher. What's his name? Zelaya or
Zach Collins.
They have the other guy too, but yeah, Collins is there. Collins gets some DH time as well. I don't know. Grandal just kind of scares me. He's another guy who's a little longer in the tooth as well. And with that knee coming off knee surgery, just having to play as much catcher as he will, it's going to wear on it.
Yeah, they also have Sebi Zavala. Collins might actually even be a free agent.
Okay.
Not seeing them all. Oh no, he's got another year. Maybe Collins. I haven't seen any sort of prognosis in terms on whether he's going to be ready for spring training. This is definitely going to push him down my board. So for those of you who are like me, who like to do a lot of early drafts, who like to draft in December and January, and November and stuff like that, this will reflect in my ranks. That I'm going to push him down my board a little bit. A guy who's older, who's got a lot of wear and tear. I love Grandal, but I'm just I doubt I'm going to get a lot of early shares. At least I want to see him actually show up for pitchers and catchers reporting. and everything kind of him get cleared to playing games before I'm willing to take a shot on him.
Yeah, makes me really want to figure out those everyday catchers next year even more. There's going to be there's going to be more with the potential NLDH, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But maybe also a little less because of stuff like this.
Yeah, one of the things I talked about at first pitch in a couple different spots, but and I think I've talked about already on a few podcasts already, is I think I'm going to be targeting a lot of NL catchers that are going to be seeing more added plate appearances, because we assume the DH will come to the National League with kind of once they finish the CBA. So guys who predominantly caught and didn't have another position to go play at in the National League, guys like Tyler Stevenson will be a big guy that I'll be targeting a lot. Guys
Smith.
like that. Will Smith. I drafted him in the FPAZ draft.
I know. I wanted him so bad, you bastard.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument Will Smith will be the number one catcher in 2022, and I think a lot of people are gonna be on the Sal Perez train, right? Because he just hit 49 home runs. A lot of people are going to be on the JT Realmuto train with the DH coming in the National League. I think Will Smith is the number one catcher heading into 2022 if the DH is in the National League as we expect.
I am just praying that he can fall to the 5th round, because we're already seeing like Sal Perez and JTR going in like the 3rd and 4th rounds, and you need to get your first closer in there. I'm hoping Will Smith is there in the 5th. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the board right now as we speak and see where I got him. I believe it was the 5th round.
I don't have that board, unfortunately.
I'm scrolling. There's been so many tweets over the last few days since we got back from FPAZ that I don't know how easily I'll be able to find it, but I'm stalling, as people can probably tell, right?
Are we gonna edit this out or leave it in?
I don't edit shit out. I just let everybody kind of just deal with the the crap that we do. As long as like nothing falls off my wall or anything.
You're gonna deal with the fucking awkward silences, and you'll like it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that is what it is. And I'll find it by the time we get to our actual talk on the draft.
Okay.
We'll talk about Carlos Carrasco. He's having surgery to remove some bone fragments in his elbow. Does this scare you? Does this maybe make you feel a little bit like, hey, we could throw a little bit of 2021 out, considering he's having this or was dealing with this issue? Where are you landing on Carlos Carrasco, a guy that I always love?
Yeah, he's such a coming former Indian guy we absolutely loved here in Cleveland. Like, I feel so bad for the guy, but he is the epitome of an injury risk, and this is just adding more to it. It's maybe this cleans up the elbow and he's better, but honestly, I don't see him on any of my teams next year, unfortunately. Maybe if you've got a late shot and you've got an IL slot, you can throw him in, but I won't have him on any NFBC teams, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think for me it depends on where he ends up in drafts. I could see him be one of those guys that people just largely ignore. But if, he's going to be another guy that he's going to be like a guy like Grandal, though. If he's pitching in spring training and looks good, I'm gonna have a hard time ignoring that, especially if the price is good. So, if he's going outside the top 10 rounds or something like that, and he's firing up 95, I'm gonna have a hard time not going back to the well on my boy Carlos Carrasco.
I get it. I don't think that'll be me, even if it's a little later.
Yeah, I totally understand. Just for those of you who are waiting on the Will Smith news, I got him at the back end of the 5th round.
Yeah.
So I had the 15th pick. I got him. He was my 5th round selection, and I'm pretty pleased with that price, actually. So
I guess I should have just taken him with the first pick in the 5th round. I had the 4 or 5 turn. I could have just taken him there. I considered it. Honestly, probably looking back on it, that would have been the way to go, but I didn't.
You got Austin Riley, which is a pretty damn good pick in the beginning of the 5th round. So
yeah.
your 6th, 7th round turn. We'll talk about that. That one just was like a dagger to my heart.
That was my favorite turn of the draft for sure. I had a mega turn there.
Yeah, that was a pretty sick ass turn. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. McCullers, he's got a forearm issue. Dun dun dun. Where are you at on McCullers? I mean, this is a guy that I completely faded coming into 2021. Well, we can talk about him as a miss. He wasn't necessarily the guy I was going to bring up as a miss as starting pitcher for me. But I did. I missed out on him, and it was mostly because I didn't trust the health. This guy's never been able to stay healthy through a career high in terms of innings this year. This scares the crap out of me. Where are you at on McCullers?
Yeah, it's the same thing. He's a guy I'm perpetually out on. And just when I was like, oh, man, he made it through the whole year without being hurt. And then sure enough, playoff time, there it is. And I was talking to Rob Silver about this in first pitch, and he was giving me a little shit about my, how I'm out on guys a lot. But I'm like, look, I make a list of guys that I fade, and I go back and I look at that list, and like 90% of them get hurt and are busts. So I'm not going to worry about that 10% that I miss on, because I'm perfectly willing to miss on that 10% in order to also be out on the correct 90%. So yeah, I right now, unless something drastic changes, I'm going to be out on McCullers again next year, and I'll find other guys. I don't need him to win. I can find other guys.
Yeah, I love McCullers. McCullers is one of those guys. If I could turn off injuries like in a video game, I absolutely would love to have him on every single one of my teams. I was big on him prior to when he was first coming up, but I just don't trust it. And this is just another reason why I'll be fading him again coming in to 2022. So Kershaw got a PRP injection in his forearm. He went really late in this FPAZ draft. You and I both faded him. I think I know what you're going to say, but I'll go first. There's no way Clayton Kershaw ends up on any of my teams in 2022.
I was just going to say, he went late, not late enough. I see PRP, and 80 to 90% of the time, that's just a precursor to Tommy John. Zero interest.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where he signs. I assume the Dodgers will bring him back. But
I would think, but this is like all the people being like, "Oh, I'm getting the discount on Lamet." No, you're not getting a discount, buddy. The late price that you think you're paying is too much. So it's going to be the same thing with Kershaw this year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely no way he's going to end up on any of my teams. Huascar Ynoa, a guy I did end up drafting, he's got a shoulder injury. Are you concerned about this?
Sure. Anytime you've got a pitcher with any kind of arm, elbow, shoulder injury, you have to be concerned. If I were drafting right now, he'd be a fade, but I don't know enough about it yet to know how serious it is. So I'm not necessarily just straight out on him like the other guys. But you have to think that maybe, the added stress of being a starter this year, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look up how many innings he's pitched lately, but I don't think it's been a lot. So I don't know if he missed a good amount of time this year with injury too, from punt the wall or something.
Yeah, that's right. He had a bad outing. His first bad outing of his career, he punched the wall, broke his hand, and he missed almost half the season. This is a guy that I drafted in the FPAZ draft. Obviously, I didn't know about the shoulder issue when I did it. Otherwise, I probably would have faded him myself. I really like but anytime a shoulder issue starts popping up, that's never a good sign. So definitely a guy that if I was redrafting again today, would not be taking. But kind of monitor this one. Hopefully, we'll get some more information about it. Jameson Taillon having ankle surgery. Man, this was a guy I faded coming into the year, largely because of his injury history. And he had trouble staying healthy. Even when he was on the mound, he was inconsistent. Any chance you go back to the well on Jameson Taillon?
Honestly, yeah, there is, because everything you said was true. But I also saw some moments there. I mean, he had a 1.2 WHIP 4.3 ERA, but it's not terrible. His home run rate was up significantly from previous years, and I don't know what the reason for that was, but it could be just some bad luck there as well. The velocity didn't quite get back up to previous norms. But honestly, I mean, like, this isn't an arm injury, and I think he should be good to go by spring training. So you should be able to get him for super cheap, and I think that could actually be, a decent late shot to take.
I mean, that's not a bad shot to take. I just don't know that's what I'm going to be taking. Pitching is so deep. Starting pitching is so deep coming into next season. Anybody who's got like a lengthy injury history, I'm probably going to avoid, and that includes Jamison Taillon. Yes, the home run rate went up. I think you can attribute a lot to that, to the park change. Going from the NL to the AL, going from Pittsburgh, which is a huge pitcher's park, to Yankee Stadium, which is, obviously a hitter's park and in a really, really bad division to pitch in. So I don't know that things are going to get markedly better. I mean, there's obviously a ton of talent in his arm. I believe that, he could put it all together and it could be a huge step forward at some point, but I'm also not going to pay for that. So he's going to be cheap. Like you said, I think it's a decent gamble. Yeah. The injury history has me a little bit scared on that one.
For sure. But I mean, when you're talking late in a draft, those are the kind of shots I like to take. This is, sure. If he's healthy, cool. If not, you drop him. It's no big deal.
Yeah. DJ LeMahieu had a sports hernia injury and going to have surgery on that. Supposedly going to be ready for spring training. Another guy that I took in this FPAZ draft, you got to wonder if that hernia issue was the reason why he struggled so much this year. Going to be first, second, and third base eligible again. What are your thoughts on DJ LeMahieu?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, my first thought isn't that that's going to really hamper him for next year. I think he'll be fine. I was thinking maybe he was playing with an injury, and that's kind of what was slowing him down because, I mean, obviously his BABIP was low. He's at 301. The previous years he was at 370 and 349. 351, 388. Like, he's a high BABIP guy, and he was just not there this year. So he is going to be, I believe, 34. Yeah, he'll turn 34 in July next year. So he's definitely, not young either, but he's not old enough that I'm really super concerned. And he's not relying on speed or anything. So he could be a nice little bargain there. I don't know where you got him in the FPAZ draft, but if he falls enough, he could be a solid pick.
I believe I got him. Let's see. I'm looking right now. The back end of the 12th round.
Okay.
So, I felt like that was a pretty decent spot. I needed batting average at that point. Obviously the positional eligibility is really, really nice to have a guy who can move around the diamond for you pretty easily like that. I think LeMahieu is going to be a guy that's slept on. I think people are going to see the power outages here. You can see the average drop, and they're going to go, "Oh, this isn't a guy that I want to roster." And I think he could easily kind of be the 2022 version of Yuli Gurriel, a guy that people slept on because of his age, because of a down season in 2020. That ended up returning just a ton of value in 2021. I think LeMahieu could be that guy as well. He's not going to, and just like Gurriel didn't like have like this huge monster year or anything, but
right.
He just really, really, really good production for your CI spot this year in 2021. So
I like the comparison. Yeah, I like the comparison. I think that's very apt. And you're drafting them for the average and the counting stats, and then you're just hoping that you get some power uptick as well. I mean, he only had 10 homers last year. He had 10 homers in a third of the at-bats in 2020. So, in Yankee Stadium, he's got some power there when he's good.
Absolutely. And it's never bad to have that kind of flexibility on your roster. So
right, very true.
I'm going to kind of bump these next two together. Aaron Hicks, he's going to play some winter ball, it looks like, or try to. And Clint Frazier is still experiencing issues of dizziness and kind of fogginess in terms of his head. Where are you at on these two guys? Because, I mean, I guess I'll start with Frazier. That scares the crap out of me. Like, if he still is struggling, like, this could be career-ending type thing.
Yeah.
And one of these careers that just never got off the ground because of a concussion type injury.
Yeah, Frazier was a former Indians prospect. There was always talk about us wanting to trade him because he, for whatever reason, he's like a clubhouse cancer guy. Like, nobody likes him. I don't know what the deal is specifically, but he's just that guy who never really, things just don't come together for him. And then, Hicks was a guy who back in the day I loved, and then he had like 70 injuries after that. And so it's just like that guy just cannot stay healthy. So, they're guys I can see picking up for a couple weeks in season if they've got good matchups coming up and they happen to find the playing time. I just don't see either of them being an everyday starter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, and I would assume that the Yankees will make some moves to kind of, bring in some healthier guys. I mean, the biggest issue for the Yankees is having their talent stay on the field, and so relying on guys like Hicks and Frazier just doesn't work, especially when you have the Luke Voigts, the Giancarlo Stanton's, the Aaron Judges who have trouble staying on the field themselves. So, I would expect them to bring in some better outfielders that can stay healthy.
They need some everyday guys in there. Like you said, they need some guys so that they can afford to give those other guys the DH when they need it. They need guys who can stay on the field, and those two ain't it.
Yeah, I wonder if they bring in a guy like Marcus Semien, who has been, all he does is rack up plate appearances.
That would be a really good call.
Yeah, especially if they're looking to move Glaber over to second base full time. So that might be their shortstop decision.
Or to the back.
Yeah. Speaking of Yankees that are always injured, Luke Voigt, he is expected to be ready for spring training. Voigt was a guy that I got on a few early drafts and then kind of faded as draft season went on. The latter decision turned out to be did not bode well for a battle of the podcast leagues where I got him in the 5th round. But do you have any belief that he can stay healthy for a full season and kind of be a guy that can really be a difference maker in fantasy?
Man, I think so. I think he can. I don't know that they're going to ever fully commit to him as their first baseman, though. Again, it's with teams like the Yankees, I'm scared that they're going to add people or, they're going to have other plans for first base where he's not going to be that full-time player. And he's useless as a part-time player, unfortunately. So we'll have to see. He's a guy who I'm not really drafting right now, but, come spring training time, if he looks healthy, if he looks like he's going to be getting – at least the lion's share of the playing time at first baseman, and you can get it, you're going to be able to get him pretty late. I mean, I'd be willing to take a shot on him, but it was a real rough year for him. The only share, thankfully, I had was in Glarf, where I had him for his OBP prowess and barely used him at all, and then traded him at the deadline.
Yeah, he went in the 17th round near the back of the draft to my other podcast partner, Paul Sport. At that price, it's, I think, a nice gamble, right? I mean, if he can return to what he was in 2020 over the course of a full season, he's an absolute steal. But if he doesn't pan out, he's pretty easy to kind of drop and move on from. My question is, do the Yankees even keep him? Do the Yankees decide that the DH spot, being used for guys like Stanton and Judge to help keep them safe, is that worth just non-tendering him? And then where does he end up from there? So I think he's a guy, again, another one of these guys. If you turn off injuries, I think he'd be like a stud. But you can't do that, unfortunately. And, guys like that, you can only put so many on your team. So probably won't end up on a lot of my teams in 2022 either. Then Nick Castellanos is expected to opt out. This seems like a no-brainer. He's coming off a huge season, another huge season. He should get a huge payday. So does leaving Cincinnati change his value at all for you?
I mean, the guy's a stud hitter, and he's going to be a stud hitter no matter where he goes, but it certainly sucks seeing him leave Great American Small Park, We saw he was still good in Detroit, but, not this good. And maybe some of that was bad luck too, but, we don't want to see him go to a Kauffman Stadium or back to Detroit. I don't think that's really an option. I think he's going to go to a bigger market, but it'll be interesting to see where he lands, and it could change his value a bit, but he's still going to be, going pretty early on because he should. He's that good of a hitter.
Yeah, I don't worry about him. Another one, it just seems like all the guys we're talking about right now ended up on my FPAZ draft. Castellanos did as well. This reminds me a lot of when Chris Davis got traded from Milwaukee to Oakland, and everybody started going, oh no, he's going to Oakland. This is going to be really bad for a power hitter. And he still put up monster numbers because some guys just have real manpower, and they'll power it out wherever they're at. I have no doubt that Castellanos would be that guy. And to be quite honest, I mean, I can't really think of a spot, at least for a contender, and I assume he'll go to a contender of some sort, that is really that bad of a stadium. It maybe won't be as good as Cincinnati, but I mean, like, worst case scenario ends up in San Francisco. I'm not worried about that. Like, I'm just not.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So, let's talk more about this FPAZ draft. You are the guy who says you hate early drafts. Yet you jumped in this one. We had an absolute blast. It was a really tough room. You know, Bubba Endricken, Batflip Crazy, Toby, Michael Simeone, Mike Kurland, Jorge Montanez. Like, we had just a Paul Sporer. You and I are in this, you know. So just like really, really packed with some, you know, powerful industry guys. And then some just, you know, kind of, regular Joe guys that were jumping in as well. What was your strategy coming in? You had the first pick. I had the 15th pick. We did KDS, right there on the spot. So what was your plan kind of coming into the draft?
Well, so let me tell people about my comprehensive plan coming into the draft. That was, hey, Justin, can you print me off your player rank so I have the guys' names in front of me to draft? That was literally all I did. And then we get there, and they give us, like, there was one draft that they had previously to this. And, of course, our buddy Zach Waxman was in that draft. Why? Because Zach is in every draft. There are no – it's like a tree falling in the forest. If Zach Waxman is not in the draft, did the draft happen? Probably not.
I don't believe so. Zach already has more drafts done for 2022 than you will do in 2022.
That is absolutely true. So coming into this draft, I zero prep. Knew it was going to be really rough. So that was part of the reason that I kind of wanted to get on an end, which is I ended up with the first pick. One, I love Trey Turner, and I think everybody knows that. So I'm all about taking him at 1. But the other reason was because I want the amount of time to take 2 picks in a row so that I can think about who I want instead of being rushed for 60 seconds for 1 pick. So really I had no strategy coming. I mean, I had a strategy. My strategy with draft, it's a draft and hold. So my strategy for all draft and holds is to get some early pitching to be my horses and then just pound hitting, because the way to win these is you cannot take zeros. And the position players, the hitters, run out well before the pitching does. So you need to make sure you have, at least 3 to 4 options at every position. And so I'm looking for multi-eligible guys. I'm looking for I'm trying to make sure I get all my stats. So I'm starting off, I'm getting my steals early. Power I can get late pretty easily, but I'm just trying to stay balanced offensively and then just taking shots at pitching along the way. Now, what we didn't know would happen was that catchers and closers were flying off the board early, because the average Joes, as you called them in our draft, started taking those closers real early. The one guy took him with the 2nd pick in the 3rd round was Hendricks, I believe, and then a little later, the same round was Hader. Toby took Sal Perez in the 3rd and then turned around the 4th and took JTR. So right away, 4th round, your top 3 closers, because Paul took Gallegos, I believe, in the 3rd or 4th round as well. He was a closer 3 off the board. And so, your closers and your catchers are flying off the board. So it was kind of just trying to maintain balance of the rest of my rosters while still making sure I get what I need at those positions as well. I'm not sure that I did that at catcher. I think I did all right at closer.
Yeah, I mean, my plan kind of coming in was I wanted the 15th pick, because this draft, we do the first 23 rounds there, and then we do the next 27 rounds in a slow draft online starting in January. And
Right.
so whoever has the last pick gets the first pick once we start back up again. And that's a huge advantage because there's going to be a player that has an enormous jump in value that hasn't been drafted.
Yes.
There'll probably be a few of them, but I'll have the first shot. And so the first person who got KDS, I think I want to say he took like the 8th spot or something like that. And then I was second and I took the 15th spot. And so my hope was to go either hitter or hitter pitcher in the first 2 rounds, and then go closer in rounds 3 and 4. But like you mentioned, closers went off the board so fucking quick. I mean, Hendricks went off with the second pick of the 3rd round, like you mentioned. Hader went off with the 6th pick in the 3rd round. And so by the time it got back to me in the 3rd, I was looking at Iglesias, and I did not want to double tap anymore on closers, so that's where I popped Castellanos. So my strategy kind of got thrown out the window very quickly because I really wanted to try this closer early, and that did not work out. So I still like my team. What was your favorite pick of the draft?
So one more thing with strategy, I kind of just retrospective. I wish I had done something like what Toby did. So, because you can't stream catchers in a draft and hold, you have what you have. And so you might look at Toby and say, okay, he took pocket aces, and then 3 and 4, he went with 2 stud catchers. And I actually love that because, you're getting way more stats out of the catcher position than everybody else is. And that's a huge advantage. Even if you're not, he's way behind in steals at this point. Like he's going into the 5th round with like whatever JTR gives him, like 15, maybe 12. If you're lucky. Yeah. So he's behind there, but if he can make up those steals, then he's a problem. So, we'll see how he ends up. I'd have to look at his draft to see how he did after that. But I know he told me that I sniped him on like Miles Straw and some other guys later. So, I love that. I love getting those 2 really good catchers. And I guess part of the reason I wasn't thinking I had to do that was because we were talking about guys like Stevenson and Varsho and those guys in the NL who are going to be getting more at bats with the NLDH. And I was thinking I could get Will Smith a little later, but then you took him. I should have taken Will Smith in the 5th. If I could redo this draft, I would have taken Hendricks in the 3rd over Freddie Peralta, and then I would have taken Will Smith in the 5th over whoever I took there. But best pick, we mentioned this earlier, I loved my 6-7 turn. My 6-7 turn was Jose Altuve and Trevor Rogers, who, I couldn't have asked for a better turn there. Altuve is just the definition of a great hitter. I don't care that he doesn't run anymore. The stats are going to be there. He's on a great team. Second base, I needed still. Well, I guess I had Trey Turner, but I can use him at short. And then Trevor Rogers, I just think is a bona fide stud ace. I think that time that he missed this year because of whatever his personal issues were, he had some deaths in his family or something. I think it was really sad. But I think, you watch him, he's an ace. Like this guy just needs the time to go out and do it. You're not going to get a shit ton of wins on the Marlins, but I don't really care about wins that much. Like it's too random of a stat. Like that's the stat that I focus on the least. So that was that 6-7 turn was definitely my my best picks.
Yeah, absolutely. Literally after I made my 6th round selection, I went, okay, next rounds, if they make it back to me, at the top of my list were Jose Altuve and Trevor Rogers. And then you took one, and then you took the other, and I was like, well, fuck you, Dave. So I was pretty pissed on that one.
I think that was the only time that I didn't let it time out. It got back to me, and I didn't even need the second minute. I was just like immediately those 2. I was like, if they come back to me, I know I'm taking those 2.
Yeah, I was pretty upset myself with that one. My favorite pick of my draft, quite a few. I'm going to go with Ramon Laureano. I was in desperate need of speed, as we started getting into the double-digit rounds, because the only guy I'd taken with speed, which was Cedric Mullins in the 1st. And I was like, oh, man, there is no speed, absolutely no speed once you get outside of rounds 12, 13. And then I was like, ooh, Laureano, he's gonna finish out his suspension early on in the season. And he's a guy who could steal me 20 bases. So getting him that late I don't think he'll be available that late moving forward, but I think maybe got lost a little bit in the shuffle because he missed so much time with the suspension.
Yeah, I remember when you drafted him, I said something like, "Oh shit, I forgot about him." I'm literally drafting off of a piece of paper that I'm scanning back and forth over and over again. Like, it's pretty impossible. But someone said something, and I already forgot what it was. Surgery to address the sports hernia. Is he still suspended or no?
Yeah, I think he's got probably a week. I think he's got about a week's worth of suspension.
Oh,
it's not much. I mean, his suspension started in like mid to late July. It's pretty much like the reason, or maybe it was early August. It was pretty much the reason they went and got Starling Marte because they knew he was going to be suspended.
Right.
So.
Okay. I knew there was some reason that people were like, why he's slipping. I mean, a week of suspension is not really a big issue, especially in a draftable where you're going to have, hopefully another 7 outfielders on your bench that you can plug in for a week.
Absolutely. Yeah. What was your least favorite pick that you made?
So there's 2 things that bothered me the most other than not getting what I wanted, but at the 2-3 turn, I was expecting some better players to be there. Like you mentioned, this is a super sharp draft. So, and this is usually where I default to catcher or closer when I don't know what else to take. That's usually what I do. I did that a lot this year with Sal Perez. When guys didn't fall to me, I just took Sal Perez everywhere, which was awesome. I should have done that here, but instead I took Freddie Peralta at the 2-3 turn, which is probably too early. I should have taken Hendricks there probably. And then it's like a later pick. I took Pedro Severino, completely forgetting about Adley Rutschman being there, who's probably going to be up pretty early and make that catcher pick pretty. There wasn't a lot left at catcher when I was taking anyways, but there's like 1 or 2 guys left on the board that I probably should have taken over him. So those are kind of my 2 biggest regrets, I think.
Yeah, I could see that one because Rutschman, I expect him to be up in probably May at some point. So, I think I'm gonna say that my least favorite pick. I'm gonna actually say my least favorite pick is just the strategy I did in terms of not getting speed quickly enough. It really hamstrung me, and I had to then I like the Laureano pick. I think that helped. But like with my, I think 23rd round selection, the last pick of the day, I took Victor Robles. Now Victor Robles is a fine lottery ticket, but like I felt like I was forced to make that kind of pick when I don't like being put in that position. I want those kind of guys to be icing on the cake, not a guy like that I need to pop off in order to compete in speed. And so it definitely kind of reinforces the fact that. If you're not going to take a burner early on, please, make sure you're chipping away at speed as the draft goes on. So that way you feel like you've got your bases covered.
Let me ask you this. Who did you take at the 9-10 turn? Because at the 10-11 turn, I took Miles Straw. Now, unless you just don't believe, because obviously he's not ideally the guy who I like to take in terms of like he doesn't give me a lot of power, but I think he's a legit starter, and I think he plays every day for the Indians or the Guardians next year. I'm curious if that was a thought for you at all, because for steals,
not really. I'm not a big Miles Straw guy. I do agree though that he's probably going to play every day. I should probably have him a little bit higher in my rankings than I do, especially because I think he finishes like a top 35 outfielder this year because of all of his stolen bases. I
run well, so
I took Shane Baz and Willie Adames at the 9-10 turn. And I don't regret the Adames pick because he represented kind of the last of that tier of shortstop.
I love Adames. Yeah.
So the Shane Baz pick, I probably could have gotten him the next round. So maybe not. Who knows? But if I had missed out on him,
who knows? Yeah, I don't know where Baz should go in the early drafts. I have no idea.
Yeah, if I had missed out on him, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. So maybe I should have gone for a guy like Straw at that point as well. What do you think your team's best strength is?
So my strategy in pretty much every draft is balance. You know, I want to make sure I'm getting everything that I need, especially offensively in a draft and hold. You know, position wise, I'm making sure I have several first, second, third, short outfielders. You know, that's my main goal. And make sure you're getting those counting stats. You know, I wanted to take a bunch of guys who could be aces, you know, guys like Trevor Rogers in like the 7th, you know, stuff like that. And then, you know, I got 3 potential closers. It's too early to say whether I did good, bad, or okay with closers. My first closer, you know, because of the closers were pushed up massively. The first guy I got was in the 13th, Greg Soto, who I was talking to Greg Jewett about, and you know, he loves that, you know, they've already named him the closer, like, you know, they love him there, they want him to close. So that, you know, having the manager's support is huge when you're a potential closer. So you know, he's got the strikeouts. He's obviously, you know, his control comes and goes, which is a bit of an issue when he plays for Tigers, but he did get a lot of save ops this year. And then my number 2 is Tanner Rainey, who he has some injury concerns, and they haven't named him closer, but he seems most likely, and I was talking to Greg about him too, and he agrees that he's the most likely candidate to come in as their closer. And if he is, God, that guy's skills are so good. You know, he's the kind of guy who can be that really, really great late closer. I don't know how late he's going to be, because if they name him closer, he's probably going to be going way higher than he went in this draft. And then as a third closer with like my last pick, I took Ian Kennedy. I know he's a free agent, but a couple of years now of closing successfully, I think someone will probably pick him up and use him as a closer.
Yeah, I like the Kennedy pick. The Soto pick, I'm not 100% sure sold that he will end up being the guy. Like, he blows up way too much, and like, he may start the year as the guy. I just doubt he's going to finish the year as the guy. You know, so. But the one I really disagree with, and me and Greg, I love Greg. Greg does great work. He's going to put his closer charts on Patreon for $3. It'll be the best $3 you spend every month.
For sure.
So definitely go and support that. I'm going to have him on probably this pod and the Sleeper Bus pod at some point once those things go live. But I completely disagree that Rainey is going to be the closer.
Okay.
Finnegan, I think Finnegan's the guy. Like, I don't know why people still think that Rainey is good. He's just not that good.
No?
Like,
okay.
No, he's really not. Like,
I was going to say that about Finnegan, so.
I don't think Finnegan's that good either, but I think Rainey just is like Charlie Brown fucking trying to kick that football. I don't understand why people keep thinking it's going to be him, because it never has been. Like, they've never trusted him to get the role. The few times they have, he's just blown up spectacularly. So like, I don't understand the love for Rainey. We got a couple questions in the chat. One, Dynasty PPR, Pittman, Tony, Rondell Moore, or Woods, Chenault, and Mooney. This is a baseball podcast, Matt. I'm sorry. If you really want my opinion, I'll take the Woods side of this, but we're covering fantasy baseball, not fantasy football. I can understand the confusion, it being October though. So
I will take the opposite side. I much prefer the Pittman Tony Moore side.
All right. So sorry we couldn't be more help and agree to that one. And then Jay Hook asked, where did Craig Kimbrell go? Kimbrell went fairly
he went early. He was like, I don't know, I think he was like the 6th closer off the board, wasn't he?
Was he? I'm trying to find him right now. He asked if Sport did not took him.
So for those of you who haven't seen the draft board yet, it is extremely fuzzy, so it's really kind of difficult to read, which is why we're having some issues with it.
Yeah, because it was on a projector, so we didn't have like ability to like screenshot it or anything.
It's not on. See if I can find it. Yeah, it's not on FBC yet, so we can't really get to it very easily.
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find it. I know that I was looking at taking Kimbrell because, you know, the reports are that that the White Sox are going to take the option, the $16 million option, and then attempt to trade trade. And so we assume if a team is going to be willing to pick up a $16 million contract, that they're going to be wanting
I see
to.
him. He is in the guy. I can't even read this, but 10-9. He's in the 8th round. He's the end of the 8th. He went to Team 2.
Okay.
He went right after. Camille Doval went pretty early. He went in the 8th round also, and then Kimbrel went like 2 picks later.
Yeah, if Doval is going there, I'm going to be out on Doval. I did not think he was going to be going that early. I like Camille Doval, but there's no guarantee he's the closer coming in 2022, especially if Jake Biggie is healthy.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you know better than I do about your Giants, so.
It wouldn't surprise me if he is. I mean, he was great. They really trusted him down the stretch. I mean, in some really big spots in the postseason. Typically, I think postseason usage is more important than end of season usage, because if they're willing to trust you, and then this is the whole reason why I think it was in 2020 I was big on Daniel Hudson over Tanner Rainey when everybody else was saying it's going to be Rainey, is because they trusted Hudson in the postseason. And that turned out to be right, and then he was garbage, so it didn't really work out. Let's. What about you? I mean, I already talked about my biggest weakness in terms of speed. Oh, my strength, though, I didn't talk about that. My strength is my starting pitching. My starting pitching is absolutely stacked, and we'll talk about this a little bit more here in a second when we talk about kind of our thoughts on how we think this draft kind of helps us plan for our strategy. My starting pitching, Max Scherzer, Joe Musgrove, Pablo Lopez, Shane Baz, Teoscar Yanoa, Kyle Gibson, and Josiah Gray. I love my starting pitching.
You are such a Gibson honk, man. You love that guy.
I know. I did that partially for the meme of it. But he's one of those guys, I feel like I can pencil in for 170, 180 next year, no problem. Getting him in the 20, or I got him in the 19th round. The 20th round. I'll take that. I'll take 170 innings, 180 innings in the 19th round. I agree. It's a great rotation. My only issue is that I don't know if that should be what you were focusing on for a draft and hold. But yeah, I do agree that you made out very well there. Personally, that was your strengths, but I was just going to go to the weaknesses now. So for my weaknesses, I didn't do what I wanted to do at catcher. The catchers that I was going to take all went earlier than I thought they were going to go. And granted, this is off of zero information, one draft. So what do I know? But I ended up with Yachty, which I like because he plays close to every day. And then Pedro Severino, like I mentioned, is my number 2. So I didn't love that. And then closer, like I said, that could easily be a weakness also with Soto, Rainey, and Kennedy. And then as a third kind of mini weakness would be wins, just because I took a couple of Marlins starters, and if Freddie Peralta doesn't, if he does not go as deep or doesn't pitch as many innings, I maybe should have targeted more workhorse types. Maybe I should have. I don't know. Maybe I should have taken a guy like Lance Lynn or someone who I know is going to get me over 200 innings, and more wins on a better team. But I'm not sure. I don't know yet if that was a good call or not. Yeah. I've already talked about my biggest weakness. It's speed. I think batting average may be a little bit of an issue for me as well, but I'm less worried about batting average than I am speed. I definitely, if something were to happen to Laureano, he's had shin splints injuries. He's had, he had that hernia surgery in the offseason, a PD suspension. If I lose him, my team is in dire straits in terms of speed. So that's easily my biggest weakness. So what is doing this early draft? And I like doing early drafts because I think it really informs me about the player pool. It informs me about okay, what kind of strategies am I looking at, employing in 2022? What kind of came up for you after doing this early draft?
Just kind of looking at getting an early look at which positions I need to focus on. Once I see the ADP, then I can start kind of formulating my draft strategy. But I think you got to figure out closer, catcher, and third base, and kind of build a strategy around optimizing those, while also trying to get that 5 category hitter in the first. So I might be building a bunch of teams with J-Ram on him this year, because I have a feeling he's not. We took him and we said we would take him at number 2. I just did a pod with the other day with Bubba and Chris Baseball Pods and Chris Clegg and Eric Cross, and we did like a first 2-round mock draft, and I took J-Ram at 2. I don't think he's going to go at 2 though. I think he'll probably fall to like, I don't know, maybe like 6 or something like that. And I would love to start a draft with like him, and then maybe get an ace on the comeback, and then get either a closer in the 3rd or in the 4th if they are falling there, and then maybe get a catcher around there too. And so I just want to make sure. The problem is trying to get all of these things together, right? It's like trying to get everything you need in those first 5 rounds that you can't get later. You need to get speed. You need to get your closer. You need to get a good catcher that plays every day. Like this is what I'm looking to do, and it's just trying to. This is kind of helping me figure out who's going to go where and what I'm going to need to focus on.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, and I kind of mentioned this during the NFBC panel when we were talking about like kind of different draft strategies, and I said like, for someone like Toby, right, pocket aces makes a lot of sense in the way he constructs his team, but that I am not the kind of guy that feels comfortable necessarily building that way.
Yeah,
the depth at starting pitching makes me feel like I could be. Especially with the way the infield positions drop off as quickly as they do. And so I could definitely see myself kind of going back on what I initially had thought, which was I would never build a team like in a main event with pitcher. I think I would. I think, I could easily start.
Wait, you confused me. You talked about the starting pitching depth and how the infielders fall off. So then why would you want to start with 2 starting pitchers?
Because there's so much pitching still available after round 10 that I feel like I could go starting pitcher, and then just hammer hitting until I need to start doing starting pitching again.
Gotcha.
And so I think I may build a few teams this year going starting pitching, because I prefer the hitting that is available, before round 10, as opposed to, and still like the starting pitching that's available after round 10. So, I think, I think I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of different kinds of builds this year, which makes it a lot of fun for me. But I think there's going to be a lot of ways to kind of put the puzzle together this year, or in 2022, which I think makes it a lot of fun. So.
There always are. It always comes down to building the correct strategy around your roster construction. So, I was initially, 2 years ago, I would have said I'm never going to go pocket aces. Mm-hmm. There was one team, a draft and hold, that I started with 3. So that went terribly, by the way, but because Giolito and Nola and Gallen all sucked. But it's I think a little higher risk. Like if you only have one team, I don't want to do it that way. But if you're doing a bunch of teams, I definitely agree that you can do it that way. I think it just depends on what falls to you, and if there's a space where you feel like there's a significantly better pitcher on the board than a hitter, and you feel like you can get what you need offensively later, it's perfectly viable to do that.
Yeah, because I ended up starting off Cedric Mullins, Max Scherzer, but I kind of wish I had started off with Scherzer Buehler, and then I could have gotten some pretty interesting guys there in the 3rd, 4th round. Eloy was available. I did take Castellanos. Real Muto would have been available. The only problem is picking at that back end. If you don't take speed somewhere in that back end of the first round, it's kind of hard.
Yeah. Plus you had to stay on brand. We were all like, all right, here comes the Cedric Mullins pick. Come on, baby.
If Kyle Tucker had made it to me, and he almost did, I would have taken Kyle Tucker over Mullins.
So on the Fantrax Toolshed pod that I was referencing earlier that we were on the other day, where we mocked the first 2 rounds. I believe whoever had like the 6th pick, I think it was Bubba, and he took Kyle Tucker at 6 overall.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I actually like that a lot. So,
I mean, my only thing is that I don't know if you're getting enough speed. Like he had, was it 14 steals last year? I love this. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he is a first-round talent on his hitting, but he doesn't give as much speed as people think. And I think it's more because the Astros just don't need to run, so they don't. I mean, they have a bunch of good hitters, so why bother stealing bases when they know that they're just going to drive them in anyways?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely would still need to keep going after speed, but I mean, I think he could be a 40-20 guy next year. And
okay.
I mean, that, in outfield, as we learned this year, is not as deep as it's been in the past.
I think the 40 is more likely than the 20, honestly.
It could be, yeah. It definitely could be. And I think he's going to, I mean, with Correa being gone, I think he's going to hit much higher up, much higher in the lineup. At least
wasn't he already hitting like 5th or 4th to 6th? I thought he was sitting pretty high up already. But yeah, I'm with you there.
He kind of vacillated between like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th.
Well, early on, him and like Austin Riley were hitting like 7th. They were way down, but then they moved up significantly as the season progressed. So I don't have any problems with Kyle Tucker. I don't think I'm going to have any, just because I want more speed and probably not an outfielder. But I certainly think his talent is worthy of a first-round pick.
J Hook is asking if the Rays sign Andrew Heaney and make him a follower. Tell me you're not back in, Justin. I'm absolutely back in. I'm going to be in on Andrew Heaney until the day I die. I mean, I got to see where he lands, obviously, and see if that is, going to end up being a good spot for him. I'd love to see him end up in San Francisco. Yeah, get him to San Francisco, and I'll definitely be in. But he'll be a cheap throwaway,
Mm-hmm.
We're getting more football questions. This is the baseball podcast, guys. Gavsek trades CMC for Ridley and Sanders. I don't have a wide receiver 1. For context, he's got Brandon Cooks, Woods, Allen Robinson 2nd, and Adam Thielen. I'm not trading CMC, but again, this is a baseball contract.
I don't know, man. CMC, more injury issues. Running backs have a short shelf life. I think Sanders is getting really unlucky with not having any TDs yet either. And I love Ridley. Ridley's gotten probably the most unlucky player this year with all the air yards. It's coming for him. So I think if this is a dynasty, especially, I'm definitely taking the 2. And probably for this year too, because I don't even know when CMC's coming back. He just went on the IR again.
Yeah, I don't even understand the IR anymore in football. Apparently, it's like 3 weeks. I don't even know. All right, let's do a postmortem real quick. How do you? Let's start. I got a question from Lucas Bieri, who really great dude that we got to hang out with in at First Pitch. Writes over at the Dr. Rota website, and he sent me a message. I still have to respond to it, but hopefully hear the pod as well. He's asking, like, how do you even do a postmortem on your teams? Like where do you start for that? Like, how do you go about it?
So first of all, shout out to Lucas. Been talking to him for a long time. One of the nicest guys you'll ever talk to. And he was at First Pitch Arizona. Spent a lot of time talking to him. He's been a really big supporter of mine, especially, but really everybody in this industry. Really good mind, loves his dynasty stuff too. He knows way more about the minor leaguers and everything than I do. So he actually sent me this question, and I was like, oh, what a coincidence. Justin has that on our notes. No, it's because he sent that to you too. Okay. Well, that makes sense then. So when I'm doing my postmortem, I'm looking at the final standings, and even if I win the league, I'm looking, did I struggle anywhere? Where did I struggle? What spots? What did I do in the draft first and foremost? Did I just not address something? Did too many things go wrong? Did I not give myself enough backups? Was my strategy off? Did my first 5 picks set myself up to take advantage of value in the rest of the draft? Meaning, like, if I'm balanced through the first 5 picks or so, now I can take whatever the draft gives me. I don't have to force anything. Like, if I'm missing speed, I have to force speed at some point. I don't want to be in that position. I want to put myself in a position where I have pretty much everything that I need, more or less, at least the beginnings of it. And then I just see what the draft gives me, and then I just take it. And then I'm also looking at how much of my fab did I spend on certain types of players. I know a lot of people spent like 75% plus on potential closers this year. I think you're one of them. Me personally, I did really well on closers, and I usually do pretty well on closers. So thankfully, I did not have to divert that much of my fab to picking up closers along the way. And then I'm also looking at, you're either spending money in the draft or in fab. One way or the other, you're spending money on closers. And then for me, the other thing I ask myself is, did I leave enough money for the last few weeks of the season? Because that's perpetually a problem for me, which I've been getting better at, but I still think I need to take it a little further next year.
Yeah, I go about it a very similar way. I first start with standings and try to figure out, especially in the spots where I'm not just where I was low in the standings in terms of each category, but where I was kind of middling, right? Where was I? And then I also want to look at what I did right. And I tend to try to break things up into three kind of categories, right? Did I make a strategical error? Right? Was my strategy wrong? Was my player analysis wrong or right? Or was luck involved, right? So, for instance, you mentioned, in some of my leagues, I struggled with saves. In TGFBI, I absolutely struggled with saves. I spent $800 or $850 of my $1,000 chasing saves all year long. But it wasn't a strategic mistake. It was Trevor Rosenthal, right? It wasn't a player analysis mistake. It was bad luck, man. Dude got hurt, right? I didn't even get a single save from him.
Right.
And so I want to categorize those things, and I do that for my good players, my good parts of my strategy as well. I want to see, because don't get me wrong, I'm going to take a victory lap all day long on Cedric Mullins, but I also got lucky. We can't deny the fact that, while I did identify a guy who was going to break out, I did not think he was going to break out to the extent that he did.
Not 30 homers, especially, yeah.
No. I didn't think he was going to hit 30 homers. I thought he'd be, maybe a 15-25 guy or something like that.
Right.
And so I'm mainly looking at, for two things. One, are there any flaws in my process, right? What process mistakes did I make that I need to correct coming into 2022? And two, if I did make errors in my player evaluation, what went wrong?
Right.
Why did I not see Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s breakout coming? Why did I not see Sal Perez's breakout, coming? What flaw in my process of player evaluation did I make, right? And then what was good about my player evaluation? What was good that made me identify Cedric Mullins as a breakout candidate, and where can I apply that in the future? So that's kind of how I start in terms of that. Let's talk about kind of any sort of strategy mistakes that you make in 2021. Was there any glaring things as you're looking through that you went, you know what, if I had just done this, part of the strategy a little bit different, I would have had a more successful season?
So overall, because I'm who I am and I focus as much on strategy, I honestly looked at it and I didn't really make any strategic errors in general, but in some specific leagues, I could have been better. And I made the mistake in the tag of taking a bunch of shots on cheap potential closers, because it was so early that I felt like the value there lied in taking a bunch of shots. And if, 2 or 3 of them hit out of 6, then you're good to go. Unfortunately, the guys that I took shots on didn't work out, and it ended up being, that's honestly the reason we lost the tag, because we ended up with a 1 in that category and everything else was good. And we spent way too much of our fab, chasing saves. That was the only place that I was chasing saves all year. So there was that. And then, in the draft and holds, I didn't put enough emphasis on getting those everyday catchers, because I had Sal Perez everywhere this year, but not in the draft and holds. So I'm still learning how to do draft and holds better. So I did have strategic errors there, but it was because I didn't know. I didn't come in knowing what good strategy was, and now I think I have a better handle on it. So for me, strategically was pretty spot on overall, which saved me from with some of my player evaluation gaffes, which I think I had more of than usual this year. So yeah, I think strategy wise, the other thing was just not using StatCast enough, and using 2019 or not using 2019 is enough, and using 2020 too much. I think those were but that's all player evaluation more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest mistake we made as an industry was using 2020 as too big of a sample. So I think almost everybody,
as Phil pointed out, as he beat us all down everywhere.
Yeah, as he just ran laps around us. Yeah, that if we had tried to make the kind of the bold declarations that we made off of a 60-game sample in any year, most of us would have laughed people out of the building. But because that's all we had in 2020, we just made some, I think, egregious errors in how much we weighted 2020. Yeah. I think the industry as a whole needs to take that out, and I'll be right along with them. Yep. Kind of my biggest strategical error is what we call an appealed authority. And it was not trusting myself and my own ability to assess talent and evaluate players, and falling back into the the people know more, or the groupthink knows more, and because I made lots of mistakes in terms of letting guys who I went, oh man, this guy's such a good value, I should take him here, as opposed to going, no, I'm going to trust my process and trust what I think, and not worry that he's going 5 rounds past ADP and I should take him. And I did this with like Zach Gallen, in the main event, where I went, oh man, I just got Zach Gallen in the 8th round, when had I taken a guy like Pablo Lopez or another guy going around that area that I actually had ranked above him, I would have done considerably better. So, I made the same mistake with Charlie Blackmon, where I got him in both my main event leagues. And I think I've talked about this on this podcast before. Like if I had just substituted Cedric Mullins for Charlie Blackmon, I would have gained 10 to 12 points in each of my main events, which puts me in, in money contention and stuff. So I think, part of my, the way I'm going to approach 2022 is to be more confident, not appeal to authority as much. I still want to take in as much information as I can from people that I trust, right? It's important to read articles, listen to podcasts, talk with people that I trust in the industry and outside of the industry that I know are good at player evaluating and good strategically. But at the end of the day, it's my team, and I should be, and I need to make the picks that I want to make, as opposed to going, I'm getting a really good value here and end up not.
I loved everything about your answer there, and it shows me how much you've grown since I've gotten to know you. I mean, from your first main event to now, I mean, like, everything you're saying shows how much you've absorbed, and I mean, I feel like, I don't want this to sound patronizing, I feel like a proud father, though. I'm like, man, he's talking about like injury risk analysis, like all of this is so good. And I've talked about a lot of this on High Stakes Heat. These are things that you learn as you're playing high stakes. Like, you're a better player when you have the confidence to ignore what other people are doing and saying, and you know what you want to do with your team. And everything that you said, like, there's values and then there's perceived values. ADP, people who just go by ADP and they're like, well, this guy's like 3 rounds past his ADP. It's like, yeah, there's probably a good reason for that, though. Sometimes guys fall through the cracks and you can take advantage, but way more often, those are just perceived values and people thinking that they're getting a deal or a bargain when they're not, which is a big reason why we cross off as many players as we do, because I don't care how far this guy falls. I'm just not taking him. He's not a guy I believe in. I'm not an every guy has the right place to be taken somewhere kind of guy. Appeals to authority. Beat writers telling me who's going to close for teams. They were almost all wrong.
Yep.
All the people saying, oh, the team and the player know more than you do. They know their bodies better. It's bullshit. I've seen, 20 years of doing this. I've seen when I see certain keywords, injuries and all that stuff, I'm just out and I'm not doing it because I'm not going to have that. Well, they wouldn't have signed him if he wasn't healthy. No. Don't listen to that crap because athletes will use any reason that they can to keep playing. It's not that they know their bodies better. They're trying to push themselves. They're like, well, I'm an athlete. I can handle this. Tell me how that worked out for DeGrom in the second half. How many innings did he pitch? Oh, he didn't. That's right. So you cannot appeal to authority. You need to be confident in yourself, and that's how you know when you've really made it as a high-stakes player, when you learn to ignore all the noise. And like you said, listen to the people who you respect, but keep that circle small. Don't read everything. Don't read everything you read on Twitter. Make sure you're reading stuff from players who are good and people who do really good analysis that you can lean on. There's not that many of them out there.
I'm going to disagree with you on that point, only because I want to absorb as much information as I can to challenge what I think, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't matter, like, if I don't care if the person is not a good player or not necessarily a good analyst. I want to read it, and I want to be able to make that decision on whether that information is worthy of reading. Because some of the best information you get is going to be from guys we don't know. Like, that's just the bottom line. Like, and I think often we get in an echo chamber if we keep that grouping too small. Now, that being said, there are going to be people I trust a hell of a lot more than others, right? I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust Vlad. I'm going to trust Phil. I'm going to trust Zach. I'm going to trust Paul, Eno way more than maybe I trust, Joe Schmo. But I want to absorb as much information because someone's going to see something that maybe I don't see. And I want to be able to go and see, okay, hey, if I now go back and reevaluate what I think, am I now seeing what they were seeing? Often they don't. Often I go, it just reinforces what I already believe. But every once in a while you see, oh, this guy maybe saw that, a pitcher X moved on the rubber, and after that he was really, really effective that I hadn't noticed before. Okay.
You're right about that. I was more speaking because you're coming at this from an experienced player point of view. From what I see from a lot of players who are inexperienced or new to the high stakes or even whatever stakes they play at, like lower stakes, beginners, whatever, they see all the information out there. They see sleepers articles and they're just like, oh, I got to read this. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can be information overload and it really muddies the water. So what you're doing with reading stuff and being able to kind of assess it and everything. Because you're right. Like there's people, Eric Smolsky, a guy who I was in my GFBI league, really great player. I started following him just because he was in my league. He puts out really good information though. And I assessed that early and then I added him to what I call my inner circle of, okay, I'll read what he has to say now. That's just how I do things, but I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm not saying that like people can't come out of nowhere with good information. It's just if you don't know how to assess between that and the bad information, it can muddy the waters and make you you're not going to be able to kind of get what you need out of that information. You're just going to take it all in equally, and then you can't do that.
The difference between a good player and a good analyst is the ability to filter. Its ability to filter out what is good information and what is not good information.
Exactly.
Jay Hook says, Joe Smo checking in. How's it going? Hey, that's not very nice. Jay Hook won our TGFBI league, which was absolutely stacked with talent. You are no longer a Joe Schmo. You're just a Joe. Any other lessons you want to talk about before we move on to kind of the players we missed on?
Let's see. Oh, I guess I didn't talk about that at all. I think I want to go even more towards vets and away from rookies than I was already doing before. I've kind of been going more and more in that direction, and I think I need to keep going in that direction. Especially when it comes to pitchers, man, they're just so no matter how skilled they are, they're so inconsistent. There's very rarely rookie pitchers who come up and can consistently deliver you value. Even I was like, I think Logan Gilbert's going to be the exception. I had him everywhere this year. It's not that he was bad, but he wasn't particularly good, and you had to hold him for too long before you even got to that point. And I think I want to keep going away from that. I'm going to use StatCast more to weed out guys like Victor Robles because I didn't do that well enough, and I ended up with Robles on a couple teams this year. He's a guy who I think could be like a post-hype guy in like a year or two down the road, kind of like a Nick Gordon at the end of this year. But I just, those guys whose EV is so low, exit velo, I got to stay away from guys like that. And while I'll keep using age and playing time and lineup spot as factors, I'm not going to cross guys off on that alone anymore. We saw, obviously Scherzer and Cruz did well, but there's other things around Scherzer where I'm still glad. Like procedurally, I think I made the right call to fade him, even though he was good. But I keep saying Cruz, and the guy's, as long as he's hitting the ball as hard as he is, I don't think there's a reason to fade him. But then you had guys like, Riley, who I was in on despite hitting 7th, but then also guys like A.J. Pollock and Chris Taylor, who had monster years that I stayed away from because I didn't know what the playing time situation was there. And I think when you're talking about later picks that you're not relying on them to play every day, I think you can take shots there and hit on guys like that. I need to take lots of shots on starting pitchers with good velocity and good stuff. Major emphasis this year. My biggest lesson was stuff and velocity over control and command starters for sure, especially with the lower velo. I had too many Maeda, Hendricks, kind of guys like that they seem safe because they were in the past, and then you just saw them get blown up this year when they don't hit their spots. So I'm changing my pitching evaluation pretty much completely from coming into the year until going into 2022.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think often we get a little bit too overblown on nitpicking guys late in drafts and stuff, and these are the guys you're gonna churn and burn off your roster anyways. Take the gamble on the talent and hope that it works out. Let's talk about some of our 2021 misses and start with catcher. I'm going to talk about a guy that you hit on. And that's Sal Perez, man. I did not see it coming, and he was a guy that had completely faded. Kind of had an injury riddled 2020, but that was largely an eye issue that was cleared up prior to the start of the season. It wasn't a knee issue for as a catcher, wasn't an arm issue. He ended up delivering a ton of value. I'll be interested to see if he continues to go as high as he went, like in this draft. He went in the 3rd round. I don't know that I can pay that kind of price on a catcher, but if you're going to pay for it, he probably is worth doing.
It depends on the format. I think Toby had the separate approach considering it was a draft and hold. Like I said, you can't swing catchers in that. So I think the counting stat advantage that gives you, like, he had 121 RBI this year. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but consider like how many RBI, Austin Nola had, like probably like 27 or something. So like if you're literally getting 100 more RBI than someone else's starting catcher, like that's just insane. So, I get the 3rd round seems high, and it probably is a little bit because catchers are involved in every play. They have a higher injury rate than any other position. You can look at the league leaders in injuries, and it's catchers is the number 1 position for injuries. So it's a thing. But while I didn't see the 48 injuries coming, I did not understand how this man was going in the 6th to 8th round, given that he plays every single game. And this is a great defensive catcher. He's in the AL, so they can play him at DH when he needs to play DH. He just had everything I was looking for. So I had all the Sal Perez this year, and that probably won me. That was probably the biggest reason that I won leagues. So luckily, catcher was a big hit for me in most leagues. My misses were kind of just when I was taking like late 2nd catcher guys. I had some Jose Trevino and Austin Nola, and Nola didn't come back until like, I don't even know, 2.5 months into the season or whatever it was. It was way later, and he didn't even play every day when he came up. Like that was the whole thing. I thought they're going to play him a lot because he can play him at first base and all that stuff, and that didn't end up happening. And Jose Trevino was just not really good. But luckily I had Sal there.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. My hits at catcher, and we'll talk about our hits next week, were my second catcher. So I have a lot of Buster Posey coming in, and that kind of helped save the fact that I didn't get some of those big names at catcher early on. What about first base? What was your first base miss this year?
I don't know if you consider him a miss or not, but CJ Cron I was expecting more from. He was a great play at home, and he had stretches where he had one stretch for like a month or so where he was pretty close to elite, but the rest of the season he was kind of, especially away, he was borderline unusable in away games. Now in NFBC where you can use him for like half a week, but like what better you'd have to have a first baseman for that kind of power to use instead of him, because when he's on, he's hitting bombs, but I just think he wasn't quite what I was hoping he would be. And then the full-on bust that I had was Christian Walker. I had him in like maybe 2 leagues. I guess probably should have been looking more at StatCast there, but he just didn't look like him, like a healthy version of himself this year. I was thinking he's a guy who can get late, that's going to hit 25 to 30 bombs and play every day. And pretty much none of that was true.
Yeah, Walker was a guy I ended up fading a little bit just because it seemed like there was a little bit of competition there, with Pavin Smith, and I thought Seth Beer would be up earlier than he was. So I didn't get a lot of Pavin Smith. My miss this year was Vlad Guerrero Jr. And I mean, I was part of the contingent that was fading him. The only place I drafted him was in the tag team league, and that's because Shelly was so high on him.
Nice.
And thank God for her. Right? So, between him and Cedric Mullins really carried our offense in the tag team league. I just didn't buy that the launch angle changes were necessarily real. And yeah, I mean, it was a huge miss. I mean, there were people who were on this. Our good buddy Vlad Sedler was a big proponent of his. And I just wasn't ready to buy that it was all going to come together in the way he did. He hit more home runs this season than his dad ever did in a single season. That's insane.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't consider it a miss because, again, like procedurally, I think I was right to not take that. Obviously, it ended up being a miss technically, but did we know that he was going to raise the launch angle? We've seen guys increase their launch angle, and then it goes right back down like a month later in the same season.
It did in spring training. Spring training, in the first week of spring training, it was up, and by the end of it, it was back down.
Right.
So, ultimately, it sucks that I wasn't in on him, but I also, it's not like I was getting schlubs in the 4th round where he was. Right.
And it's not like we didn't know that he could do this, right? Like I said, every time I talked about him in the preseason, it was, I know he can have a monster season. I get that. I don't know if for where I have to take him, it's worth him not doing it because he doesn't give me any other paths to value. If he's not hitting those bombs, what the hell am I getting from him? Because he doesn't run. I mean, you're getting probably a good average, but it just, for me, it didn't make sense. But for all the people who, there's probably a lot of people who just, look, I've scouted this guy for years, and I know he can be a monster MVP candidate. I'm just going to take him. I don't care what the risk is, and that's fine. I totally get that, but I don't really super regret not taking him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely regret not taking him in a few spots, but especially in the leagues where I ended up with Eugenio Suarez and the spot where I should have gotten Vlad. But that being said, I did say, in the preseason last year or coming into 2021, that I do think there is a monster season coming from Vlad at some point. I just didn't think it was going to be this year.
Exactly.
And are you taking him in the 1st round at all?
No.
Okay. Just because of the lack of speed?
Yeah, it's just not how I want to build my teams. Not really that I think he's going to regress. Although I think it's possible. And I've heard a lot of people talking about his second half compared to his first half because his Dunedin stats were ridiculous. They're not going to be in Dunedin again next year. So, they're going to be in the Rogers Center, which for those of you who don't know, the Rogers Center was like played as a pretty solid pitcher park for those of I didn't know this. So if you're looking at the StatCast park factors, I think it's like 22nd, ranked 22nd overall. So it's not really the hitter's paradise that the people are thinking it is, I think.
Yeah. Second base, I think I know who you're going with here, or who you should go with here. So
yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and lead us off with Dylan Moore.
Yeah. So this is another problem with not using StatCast enough in my player evaluations coming into the year. The guy that I saw in 2020, he had a lot of pass value with the speed and the power and being able to play multiple positions. He got a lot of playing time. Like, he just couldn't hit for good enough average. He's just not a good hitter. I thought he had taken a step forward in 2020. Watching him, he seemed to be on top of the ball. He was more aggressive. This year he looked much more tentative. Not nearly didn't swing at as many pitches. And ultimately, I guess he's just not as good as I thought he was going to be. Definitely ended up being one of my biggest misses of the year.
Yeah, what the crazy thing is? He still stole 21 bases.
Yeah, but I mean, like, a lot of that comes with like part-time play. You shouldn't have been playing him for a lot of those steals.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I talked about with Dylan Moore coming into 2021 is there was a huge range of outcomes for him. And the problem is the bottom range of that outcome was like a short side platoon, which is where he ended up being. And so that's unfortunate. And the guy I'm going to pick, the same exact issue, was Nick Solak. Solak was a guy that I tried to get in a bunch of drafts. Like, he's got some pop, he's definitely got speed,
right.
He can hit average, but he cannot hit against righties, and that is a huge fucking problem. If you can't hit against righties, you're not going to play. And I thought the fact that he, was traded for by Texas on a team that's crappy, they'd give him as much run as they could, and they did, and he never was able to produce with it. It's just one of those things where you got to be a good hitter first. At some point, you just have to be good at hitting the baseball, and Nick Solak has yet to prove that he is.
Yeah, and, as we, with StatCast and with all these advanced metrics that we now have access to, it's really kind of changing my strategy, because a lot of my strategy coming into recent years was based around the fact that we didn't really have a lot of conviction in our player evaluation skills because we didn't really have the metrics to show us those things. So, the things that I look for, like paths to value, like, do they give me steals? Can they give me homers if they're not doing one or the other? Am I still going to be able to get value out of them? Is their playing time secure? Now that we have access to these stats that can help us determine how good of hitters people are, these things kind of fall away a little bit. So now, moving forward, I expect to be much better with my player evaluations, and then I can kind of change my strategy depending on that.
Yeah. What about shortstop? What was your miss there?
I didn't have many misses at shortstop because shortstop was something I tried to get early in every single league. So I got a lot of Trey Turner, and I don't remember who else I ended up getting, but I had a lot of Trey Turner. Shortstop was usually very good for me, but I will say that Story was a massive disappointment this year. I'm not sure if I could have seen that coming, because it's not like he got traded out of Coors or anything, but it seemed like once they decided not to trade him, he just lost the will to even play. Like, he just seemed like zero fucks were given from that moment on. If you look at the stats, it's like, oh my God. He got super unlucky early on. I think he was leading baseball with like 12 homers at one point that should have been homers, 12 barrels that should have been homers, but were, unlucky. They were caught or whatever, or became doubles. And then, like, he was running a shit ton, and then he just stopped. This is like, he's like, oh, you're not going to trade me? All right, well, then fuck this. That's what I saw. So, overall, super disappointing, right, in the couple places I had him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that if he's living in the third round, I think I'm going to buy in on him. I know there are going to be a lot of people.
The fifth in our league, didn't he? In our draft, didn't he?
I want to say he went in the third.
Oh, okay.
But
Maybe
I'm not
I
100% sure on
I
that.
thought he was. I thought I looked at it and I was like, "Holy hell! Like you can get Story that late?" But yeah, no, I think he's a good candidate for a bounce back. I just got to see where he ends up.
Yeah, I'm double checking right now, but I'm pretty sure he went in the third round. Yeah, he went in the team 12 in the third round. So
Okay, so end of the third.
yeah, if he had made it to me, I would have been absolutely stoked.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people are going to fade him leaving Coors, and because I don't know how many times it has to happen where a player is traded out of Coors or signed somewhere out of Coors where people are like, "Oh, look at the road numbers." No, you have to actually account for the fact that they get hurt leaving Coors when they're a full-time player there. So,
Right.
Look at what Arenado did this year. He was fine, right?
Right. Right.
It's just Arenado. So, I think Trevor Story will be kind of a huge bounce back guy for me in 2022.
Agreed.
Especially because I do think that the fact he wasn't traded actually weighed on him.
I absolutely think it did.
I talk about this all the time. These are people. Like these
Right.
are people that with actual emotions and psyches and things that happen off the field affect them. And while not being traded is technically not off the field, it can be lumped into that. So my biggest miss at shortstop, I'm in the same boat as you. I actually hit on most of my shortstops. Trey Turner was a big target for me. Willie Thomas was a kind of a late target for me. So I had a lot of success at shortstop. But one guy I didn't get many shares of in 2021 that I should have been able to identify as a guy that was a bounce back was Jorge Polanco, because he was a guy that he had a monster 2019. And we all kind of just overvalued his 2020 kind of struggles. But it was only 60 games, man. Like, we should have just thrown that out and been like, this guy knows how to hit. I mean, obviously, we couldn't have predicted the monster year he was going to have in 2021, but we should have seen that he was a huge value in drafts in 2021. And I wish I had kind of, because he's been a guy that has been on my, target list in the past. He should have continued to be on my target list this year. And I don't know that I'm going to pay the inflated price in 2022, but I definitely should have had more shares in 2021.
I think for me, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, looking at the barrel rates, before 2019, it was all like sub 3%, and then he had 6.3% in 2019. And then in 2020, it went back down to 2.8%. So I think my thought was, okay, he had one outlier year. And then this year he was all the way up to 10% barrel rate. And it was like, oh, okay, we haven't seen what you can really do yet. But yeah, I mean, I just missed on him, I guess. I also don't like the Twins hitters because of the fact that they're kind of like the Rays where there's too many guys that are in and out of the lineup too much. But, when you're talking about getting him as late as you did for 2021, you can't, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. What about third base?
Third base would be my boy Brian Hayes. And again, kind of going back to the rookie thing, I think I put way too much. I saw seeing him in 2020, he looked like a star to me. I was kind of making some Lindor comparisons, Lindor light, but I think I had too much confidence in him, and pretty much everywhere I had him. I mean, then he had that injury that kept him out for way too long at the beginning of the season. What they said would be like a week or two ended up being like, again, 2.5 months or something like that. It was like ridiculous, and I held him. And by the end of the year, he was running and looked good. But for next year, he could be a real nice bounce back kind of guy, like post hype guy. But for this year, he kind of killed me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on Hayes. He's not my pick, but I had lots of shares of Hayes, and that really hurt this year. I think a lot of it was injury, though. So I'm willing to go back to the well, especially if there's going to be a reduced price. There's actually a lot of really interesting targets at third base, especially because there were so many guys who flopped at the position, including Eugenio Suarez, who I mentioned earlier. This is one where when you see red flags, you should just believe them. and go for guys with less red flags. And we saw the red flags in terms of the batting average cratering. And for some reason, me and a lot of other people believed that, hey, he's still going to hit for power. Well, he did hit for power, but he also crushed you in the batting average department and then got platooned late in the season. I mean, it just was an absolute nightmare for Eugenio Suarez. His price is going to drop considerably, and I know he finished the season strong, but they need to make another trade in Cincinnati, not just losing Castellanos, for him to have full-time playing time in 2022. And until I see that, I'm probably going to be out on Suarez.
I will say you were in good company because Casey Cha drafted him on pretty much all of his teams. So,
Yep.
I don't know what Phil's feelings were, but 2020 being the short season that it was, you look at his BABIP, it was 214. So obviously you're thinking that's just a lot of bad luck. Now the downside was that the contact rate kept falling, so that's kind of where
that's the red flag.
But I ended up taking him in the FPAZ draft. I don't know if you noticed that, but I took him in, I think, the 16th round, something like that. I just felt like at that point the upside was worthwhile, but we'll see.
Got another question here. Hey guys, you guys want to trade Ridley with me, or should I do Amari or A-Rob? Again, this is baseball podcast.
Guys wants to trade Ridley with me. Should I do Amari and A-Rob or Woods and A-Rob? I would do Woods and A-Rob for Ridley.
Yeah, I think I would do that as well. But again, this is a baseball podcast. I no longer, or at least I'm not covering football at the moment. So, but thanks for tuning in.
Yep. We're rewarding those of you who are here with us today.
Yeah, no matter what, as long as you don't ask basketball questions, I think I'm okay.
Those people, they're like, fuck your Eugenio Suarez talk. I don't give a shit. Tell me what to do with Ridley.
Yeah, exactly. What about your outfield miss?
Outfield, I'm going to go with two guys here. I mentioned one earlier, Robles, being just because, if you looked at his StatCast measures, it was all terrible. But he was a pounds to value kind of guy. I was like, okay, well, he has some power, he can run, he's a leadoff for the Nationals, and I kind of let all those other factors outweigh the fact that he's just not a very good hitter yet. I still have faith that he will be at some point. He's a former top prospect. I mean, not quite to the Vlad level, but this was a number 1 overall prospect in the minors at one point. So he's a guy I think he's gonna figure it out at some point, but right now ain't it. The other guy that I had a lot of, who I will probably be buying back in, and I think he missed a lot of time this year with injuries here and there. Anthony Santander. He just did not. Forecaster is something I read every year, and they were huge on him as well. So I was like, okay, I'm big on this guy. The Forecaster loves him too. For where I was getting him, I liked it, but I remember taking him over Brantley at one point, and just looking back on that, I'm just like cringing, why did I do that? Why did I do that? So yeah, he was just a mess.
I missed on Santander as well. I was big on him. I'm still going to go back to well on that one. I actually drafted him in the FPAZ draft. I got him, I think, in the 18th round.
And now he's well priced now. Now he's priced where he should be. So that's a good time to take him.
Yeah, I mean, he hit 258 with 12 home runs in the second half. So I think that's kind of guy you can expect as long as he's healthy. He finished the year on the IL with a knee sprain, so hopefully he's healthy coming in to 2022. Yeah. There's two big misses for me in the outfield, so I'll talk on both of them. One, it was Mitch Haniger, and
I had a lot of them.
I completely faded him, and I completely faded him for the right reason. Like, this isn't a miss on process. This is just, he was able to stay on the field in a way that he has never done in his entire career. And people will push him up the draft boards in 2022. I will not be buying on that. I don't trust his ability to stay healthy long term. But he was a worthy gamble because you were getting him like in the 28th, 29th rounds of drafts. And I love the talent. I do. Like, he's another guy. If you could turn off injuries, he'd be on every single one of my teams. But I don't trust his ability to stay healthy long term. I will not be buying in on him, even though I whiffed pretty hard not getting him anywhere in 2021. I just, I'm just going to kind of stick with that injury aversion process moving forward. So the other guy I missed out on is similar to Jorge Polanco, and that's Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds was a guy that I was big on coming into 2019 and 2020. It was a huge hit for me in 2019, in that breakout season. And then 2020, he just got really, really unlucky. And I should have identified him as one of those guys that, suffered due to the small sample. Like, there was nothing really in the numbers that told us that he shouldn't bounce back pretty well in 2021. And this was one of Phil's guys, and so I should have used that a little bit of confirmation bias to push him up. And I just didn't get him anywhere. You got great batting average late, which is such a hard thing to do. But I really struggled, considering he can sometimes be a batting average only guy that struggled with batting average in 2020 and then hitting on that Pittsburgh team, which is terrible. I just was afraid of the counting categories, and I shouldn't have. I should have really looked at him and been like, hey, got unlucky. There was no price attached this coming into this season, and taking that gamble because, man, he was an absolute stud.
He was another guy I tried to get everywhere, but had a few shares. Because Matt Williams and I did a Turn 2 podcast in the offseason, and he was one of the guys we were talking about that we loved because, this is a career like 380 BABIP guy. Like, this is a guy who throughout his whole career, his lowest BABIP before this year was 362 other than 2020, where he hit 231. So, like, it was very easy to see that, like, okay, the average is bullshit. Like, he's going to be fine. You're right. Like, you didn't know what you could count on him power-wise. He had 16 homers in 2019, but for as late as he was going and being in a lineup as bad as Pittsburgh, you knew that he was going to get the opportunity to play. And so that's really what I was focusing in on with him as to why I really liked him.
Yeah. All right, let's move to starting pitching. Who was your starting pitching with?
I put a bunch of them. So first of all, I said Giolito wasn't the ace I was hoping for. I ended up with him in the first 2 rounds in a couple places. Phil was huge on him. He was never a guy I loved before. But then I was like, okay, well, despite his bad control previously, like, his whip was phenomenal in 2020. And again, small sample. I shouldn't have put too much stock into it. I think I took him a little higher than I should. Like, I think I should have had other guys ahead of him. But honestly, how many pitchers busted in that area? You had Nola, Castillo. Like, there's quite a few landmines there. So I can't feel too terrible about that. But the main guys that I busted on were the kind of guys I was talking about before, more of the control over stuff guys, the lower velo guys like Maeda and Hendricks. Plesac had kind of the velo, but not quite. But obviously he was nothing like what I saw in 2020. I still don't know if there was something going on with health issues or the ball. I know he went on the IL for some time, and I don't know if it seemed like all these guys struggled with this ball this year. Now, maybe I'm sure their detractors will just say, oh, they're just bad. But okay, they're not this bad. And I do think that all of them seem to struggle with the new ball this year. So I don't. But I've heard other people, maybe even you, talk about how was the ball any different in the second half or first. I don't know. I really just hate just use the same damn ball. I'm so sick of trying to figure out which ball affects which pitchers and how it's going to affect them. And maybe some of these guys, maybe Plesac was a substance guy too, because we found out that Karinchak certainly was, and I don't know, Bieber might have been too. So I'm not sure what was going on there.
I think it's too. I don't know. We got a large enough sample from Bieber to make that kind of declaration on him, but it wouldn't surprise me if Plesac was. I haven't done the digging yet on him
especially since Bauer was with them and then before leaving. So he obviously Bauer knew what the sticky substances were that the Astros and the Yankees were using before.
Yeah. So. My biggest misses at starting pitching, and there are a few of them because I was with you on Maeda and Hendricks. I had Hendricks as a top 20 starter coming into the year, and that one just absolutely blew up my face in a number of spots. Robbie Ray, like I don't know that anybody saw what he was going to do coming, but it just you knew you were going to get strikeouts, and he was a guy, and you knew you were going to get innings, and that enough should have been worth the gamble later on, especially if you feel confident in what you've built in the early on, and you saw what Phil did with his main event teams, going and getting Robbie Ray, I think on all 3 of his main event teams, and how much that boosted him. But Nathan Eovaldi is a guy that, again, I missed out on, and it was largely because I faded for injury. And so while I definitely missed, and I will take the L on Eovaldi, I'm not going to take an L on the process because, again, the process is right. I don't want guys that, I don't feel comfortable can give me the kind of depth into the season like I didn't, like I feared with Eovaldi. And he'll be a guy that he'll definitely be higher up in my rankings than he was in 2021, but probably won't be high enough for me to end up with on a lot of teams.
Especially in the AL East, man, your margin for error is so small there. Those are all other than Tampa. Those are all hitters' parks. Oh, well, other than Tampa and Toronto, I should say. But you're facing these really good lineups in hitters' parks. So if I'm taking shots on pitchers, I'm not really looking to go to the AL East unless I'm really, really confident in the skills.
Yeah. Let's finish out with relief pitcher. What was your biggest relief pitcher miss?
Kind of similar to catcher. I did really well with closers. I didn't really miss much. Aside from the tag team league, I got Hendricks in a lot of places. I had Iglesias, Presley. I did really well with my closer analysis, and I think over the years, looking into it as much as I do has given me a fairly substantive edge there, which is I think why I end up winning because of not having to struggle for those saves. And God help me, if I had to use my fab looking for closers constantly, I'd be broke by like July. But if I had to pick anybody, I had a couple super late shares of like Tanner Scott and Joakim Soria. I think the Scott picks were probably the real early ones when it seemed like he was the closer. In Baltimore, we had no clue what they were doing. It was just a guessing.
We still don't know what they're doing.
Still don't know what they're doing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not Tanner Scott, but we still don't know what they're doing. And then Soria started with the Diamondbacks. I don't even remember. Who did they open with as their closer? I can't even remember now. Or was it Soria?
It was Soria.
Oh, okay.
And then he sucked. And
yeah, I mean, I knew all along that he sucked. I was just looking for some early saves. So I guess it's not even really a miss because it pretty much did what I wanted him to do, which is close for a little while. But, I mean, he's just not a good pitcher.
Yeah. I think my biggest – I mean, obviously Trevor Rosenthal was a huge miss for me getting injured.
That's bad luck.
I think that was bad luck. I think the bigger one for me was Archie Bradley. I thought them signing him to a contract. Hector Neris had been shitty for years. I really didn't think they were going to give Neris the job, and Bradley didn't get the job initially, and then got hurt and never had a chance to reclaim it. And that one hurt a lot because I think I had Bradley on like 7 or 8 teams. And so, in my TGFBI league, starting off with Rosenthal and Bradley and then backing those guys up with guys like Nick Whitgren and Jonathan Hernandez, guys who just never saw the mound and stuff like that was just awful for me. So I think Bradley was my biggest whiff. And I think ultimately what I'm going to, try to do more of, especially in these early drafts, where we, because if you do early drafts right now, what you're going to see is, holy crap, there is a huge drop off at closer. I'm really going to prioritize, taking guys early that I feel really comfortable with. And then, the traditional dart throws at the end.
And ignoring beat writers, because I saw 3 different Philly beat writers. One of them said Bradley, one of them said Kinsler, and one of them said someone else that wasn't even Hector Neris. So it was like, man, you guys don't know. You're just guessing. And the way they say it is they say it with like confidence. Like it sounds like something that they're getting from the team. But obviously,
we saw this in San Diego, where nobody was picking Mark Melancon, but I remember saying, right after the Melanson signing, like, hey, Melanson doesn't sign there unless he thinks he's the guy. And I let beat writers talk me off of it. Into Amelia Pagan and who's the lefty there that I'm blanking on his name.
Pomerantz.
And when clearly Melanson is the quote unquote proven guy.
Yep.
He signed the contract there for a reason, and was going outside the top 20 rounds. Like, that should have been the easiest money ever.
I had a debate with Eno on Twitter about this, and because he ranked Pomerantz as like a top 15 closer, and I said, how are you going to rank a guy who's not even going to close there as your top 15 closer? And we had a back and forth, and I was like, it's going to be Melanson, I'm telling you. And then I listened to that stupid ass beat writer, and in Glarf, I ended up dropping Melanson before week 1 like a moron because he was so sure that it was Pagan, and Fish picked him up and led the league in saves all year. And I was like, well, son of a bitch.
Yeah, just a bummer. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Dave, what do you got going on? Anything you want to share with the crowd?
Just taking this off season to do a lot of writing and a lot of refining of my player evaluation process. And I'm not able to build a model like Phil, but Tony and I are working on a pretty intensive spreadsheet. And if I have to kind of farm that out to someone else to help us out too, I'm willing to do that, because I need the one thing that Phil had taught me even before this year is how valuable automating your process is, and being able to have some sort of thing that can do some of the work for me instead of trying to manually do this on all of my teams every week, or even on an everyday basis, depending on what kind of league you're in. So I need to find a way to put in the work up front to lessen the load later on. And so that's what I'm going to be doing a lot of this offseason.
Yeah.
And maybe coaxing Jake out of retirement, and maybe telling him that cryptocurrency doesn't exist anymore and getting him back on high stakes heat.
Let's do that. I'm missing some high stakes heat in my life. You can read most of my work in the off season will be over on Fangraphs. I've been kind of taking the last couple weeks since the season ended a little bit easy, but I'll be producing pretty close to daily content there. It's probably starting next week, doing a lot of ranks. Will be available there, as well as on my Patreon, where I update that one really, really regularly. And then I'll also be doing ADP movement articles. So once ADP starts coming out, we're going to start talking about ADP and how players are moving, because these early ADPs influence March ADP a lot more than I think people give it credit for. So it's important to watch it. So with that, you can reach me on Twitter at JustMasonFWFB. You can reach Dave on Twitter at RunDMCD. Don't forget that D. Thank you for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland. Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.